right, hello everyone. Welcome to 4.4. Today I'm going to talk about the physiology of touch. So, the skin is the most sensitive of all of our organs. It's the home of the touch receptors of the nervous system. And I did copy this out of your book, but I disagree here. Touch is not one of the 5 basic senses. You actually have 6 or 7, depending on who you talk to. If you'll recall, when we talked about the nervous system, we talked about proprioception, one of my favorite senses. That is your sense of where you are in space and reality. So it's not 5, it's at least 6 basic senses, and touch is one of them. Touch is the first sense to develop in the embryo, all right? When you are first developing, this is the first sense, even before you can hear those little Mozart and Bach little baby monitors that women will press up to their stomachs, you will feel the sense of touch. The need for touch remains throughout your entire life. And as massage professionals, what do? We are touch therapists. We touch our clients, and the skin is usually our contact point. All right. Unless they're clothed and you're wearing gloves, you are usually doing skin to skin contact with another human being. So you need to understand the effects of skin stimulation. We can survive as a species without sight, without hearing, without taste, and without smell. But without the ability to feel, we are in constant danger. All right. So not even talking about pleasurable sensations. If you can't feel when you get a cut, like people with diabetic neuropathy in their feet, they don't know, and it's prone to getting infections. Can become deadly. You can get things like septicemia if you don't know that you have infections. Internal bleeding, bruising if you don't feel those things when they touch you, when things hurt you. And in fact, a complete loss of the sense of touch can cause a psychotic breakdown. All right. Not being touched can be life-threatening and can contribute to a condition called marasmus, which is wasting away. There's some truly horrific tests that were done with this in orphanages. I believe it was in Romania. Feel free to look it up, or I can absolutely direct you to those if you would like to check out some of those studies. But please believe, especially in the developing infant, the elderly, and those with weakened immune systems, physical touch can help save their lives. Sensory stimulation is essential to well being at all stages of life, and touch is a necessary component of that. Deprivation of touch leads to reduced production of the neuroendocrine chemicals necessary for well being. Those are going to be oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine. We'll talk about those in a little bit. And it is common for touch deprived individuals to develop inappropriate forms of sensory stimulation or abusive or addictive behaviors, often food or drugs. All right. People often, substitute touch and intimacy for addictive behaviors or for food to get those chemicals. This is in an attempt to stimulate the production of the neurochemicals, all of the wonderful cocktail of things that we want to feel satiated and satisfied and happy in our lives. As a survival mechanism, touch alerts us to danger through variations in temperature. Oh, touch the pan, it's hot. Vibration, and in pressure received by millions of sensory receptors in the skin. Literally millions. Touch informs us of differences in texture, shape, resistance, and tension. About 1/3 of the 5 million or so sensory receptors are in the skin of our hands. All right. 1/3 of the 5 million sensory receptors that are in the skin total are in our hands. The fingertips alone have more than 1,000 nerve endings per square inch, and the lips and tongue have even more. But we care less about that because we are hopefully not licking our clients. Pressure applied to the skin is the primary stimulus for the sense of touch. There's another stimulus, which is vibration, and that emerges with a rapid and regular change in pressure. Different types of touch are identified by different receptors in the skin. The degree of pressure in light touch, as opposed to deep touch, is sensed by specific sensory receptor mechanisms and can evoke entirely different responses. All right, remember this when you're working on your autistic clients. A grand majority of them, us, I'm in that group, hate light touch. It could be tickling, it could be aggravating, it could cause them to jump. So you want to use slow, steady pressure. This is also true of those suffering from generalized anxiety disorders as well. All right. It says here a slow, light touch can relay compassion or intimacy. A deep or slow touch can evoke relaxation or security, whereas an abrupt touch startles and alerts someone. Touch can evoke pleasure, which we seek, and pain or discomfort, which we avoid. Each of those sensations triggers the manufacture and release of specific neurochemicals. One of those neurochemicals, oxytocin, has been the focus of research related to relationship. All right. Known as the feel good hormone, oxytocin helps inspire positive thinking and maintaining an optimistic outlook. The role of oxytocin for bonding also extends to helping generate feelings of compassion during interactions. This can contribute to an expansion of trust among individuals during social situations. Oxytocin helps humans connect to each other and promotes a feel good sensation that fosters a sense of well being and happiness. Um, Please also remember we talked about oxytocin helping with that parent child bonding and also lowers the aggression level in some males and increases that bond trust feeling between parent and child. Physical touch increases levels of dopamine and serotonin as well, two neurotransmitters that help regulate mood and relieve stress and anxiety. Dopamine is also known to regulate the pleasure center in the brain, reducing feelings of anxiety. The human brain has evolved with two distinct but parallel pathways for processing touch information. The first pathway, which is the part of the sensory pathway, is called the primary somatosensory cortex, and that is the first region to be hit by the experience of touch, which gives us the facts about touch. All right, that's where we sense vibration, pressure, location, and fine texture. The second pathway processes social and emotional information, determining the emotional content of mostly interpersonal touch using different sensors in the skin. This pathway activates brain regions associated with social bonding, pleasure, and pain centers. I won't talk about it here and now because it is outside of the topic of our lecture, but there is fascinating research on the pathways of touch sensory perception in the differences between biological male and biological female brains, um, sexual interactions, and the ability to produce oxytocin, which happens more often than in women than what it appears to in men. But that's a story for another time. If you were interested in that, I can definitely get you some side information about that oxytocin and touch receptors. So anyway, because of the separation of these two pathways, all right, the factual information and the social emotional information that are used for processing touch, certain brain disorders can cause the separation of the physical sensation of pain from its emotional impact, and also the pleasurable aspect can be removed from the actual sensation itself. Touch can be therapeutic. Okay. You guys are future massage therapists. You should know this. You've heard this. This is why you want to do this. You want to be therapeutic. A large body of research, much of which has been conducted by Tiffany Field. Shout out to the Touch Research Institute at the University of Miami. I know I have mentioned this about 1,000 times in my lectures, suggests that therapeutic massage can be useful for a number of physical and mental ailments. Absolutely fascinating work. If you want to set up a network with mental health care team members or with any type of physical therapy things that you can work with, or any type of orthopedic doctors, there are thousands of research studies on how Touch can help all of these different conditions in various ways. But some research has also suggested that massage may be an effective way to treat insomnia, headaches, for sure, digestive problems, absolutely. I will tell you the pooping on the table story at some later date, because essentially touch is a biophysiosocial communication. All right. What form of communication is more intimate than touch? Its importance is reflected even in the language. That was a touching experience. What you said touched me. You hurt my feelings. Let's stay in touch. The various kinds of touch, nurturing, angry, parental, fearful, sexual, happy, comforting, and playful, are all in some amazing way understood by the neural pathways of the skin. The experience of touch occurs through the nervous system and endocrine system. The experience of touch is much larger than the structure and function of the skin itself. Massage therapist knows this both intuitively and scientifically. Every massage method involves some sort of touch and skin stimulation. Because we access all body structures during massage by first touching the skin, it is important to understand the basics of the structure and the function of the integument, which is what we're going to discuss in our lectures next week. All right. I do want to state here, this is by the NIH, who I love to go to for research very frequently. There's a link here when you download the PDF to this particular lecture slide, but the sensation of touch is mediated by mechanosensory neurons that are embedded in skin and relay signals from the periphery to the central nervous system. All right. So it's coming from the peripheral, from the outside, and then it's being fed up into the central nervous system. During embryogenesis, all right, when you're growing, axons elongate from these neurons to make contact with the developing skin. So there are going to be some key terms here on this lecture quiz, and they are on 2 different slides here, so you can definitely look at the PDF if you'd like, or just pause this lecture and read them over. Some of these are some review for you, like afferent. Remember, an axon that carries sensory information from peripheral organs to the central nervous system. The dermis, that's the deeper layer of skin, mainly composed of fibroblasts and extracellular matrix proteins. Remember, we have the epidermis, the dermis, the hypodermis, also called the subcutaneous layer. We have the dorsal root ganglia. This is clusters of somatosensory neuron cell bodies that flank the spine. Your epidermis, that's the superficial layer of skin that forms the barrier between the internal organs and the outside world. Hair cells. These are mechanosensory cells that relay information about head position and sound and water flow to sensory neurons. Intervertebral foramina, the space between two vertebrae that houses the dorsal root ganglia. Keratinocyte, a keratin-producing epithelial cell that is the predominant cell type in the epidermis. We have lateral lines, kind of like fish, not as cool as fish. A system of sense organs that detect movement, pressure, gradients, and vibration in aquatic animals. We're not fish. We're not as cool as fish. It is here, just so that you're aware of them. Absolutely love them. But again, we're not as cool as fish. Low threshold mechanoreceptors, somatosensory neurons that reduce gentle touch stimuli. Merkel cells, epidermal cells that display features of mechanosensory receptor cells and form synapse-like connections with a particular type of tactile afferent. Neural crest cells, ectodermal cells that delaminate from the neural tube during development and form sensory ganglia, melanocytes, bone, cartilage, smooth muscle, and even more. Nociceptors, also known as nociceptors, tomato, sensory neurons that transduce noxious or potentially tissue damaging thermal, mechanical, or chemical stimuli to the spinal cord. We are transmitting pain information, poison information, danger information to the spinal cord. Here's some imagery about how this lines up and works. Here is a guard hair as well. This is a really cool image. If you guys want to hit pause, check it out, see what everything is labeled as. I will not quiz you on this. You're not going to be tested super heavily on the MBLEX of all of these various functions and locations, but it is absolutely important for you to know the mechanics of this, the physiology of touch, just so that you are aware. All right. We also have a placode or a placode, a thickened region of specialized epithelial cells that give rise to sensory structures like feathers in birds, hair in the inner ear, and auxiliary tissues like in the lens and in the teeth. Proprioceptors, one of my favorites. Sensory neurons that transmit information about limb position and muscle stretch. Remember, proprioception is your sixth sense. You don't have five senses, you have six or seven, and that is proprioception. So please remember proprioceptors. If you get nothing right on this quiz, let it be proprioceptors. All right, pseudo unipolar axon. This is an axon that extends from the cell body of a neuron. Remember, a neuron's a nerve cell, and splits to form distal and proximal branches. A skin appendage, a mini organ or structure embedded in the skin that serves specialized function. Examples include hair, sweat and sebaceous glands, nails, feathers, smooth muscles. All right. Remember, we have two different types of sweat cells. We talked about that just the other day, or I should say sweat glands, apocrine and eccrine. So please remember that. Somatosensory neurons. These are peripheral neurons that transduce tactile, proprioceptive, thermal, pruritic, and nociceptive stimuli into electrical signals that are relayed to the central nervous system. All right. They basically take any sensory information, somatosensory neurons take any sensory information and send it to into electrical signals to the central nervous system. Taste cells, specialized sensory cells that detect salty, sour, sweet, bitter, and umami tastes. All right, umami. So, if you look at a close up of the tongue, you'll have some larger ones and some smaller ones. We cover the tongue in a different lecture. Very cool stuff. I want you to imagine licking your keyboard right now. Boom, your tongue instantly knows exactly what that would feel like. Isn't that weird? Touch domes, specialized raised epithelial structures that are found surrounding guard hairs. These structures contain Merkel cells, and the neurons that innervate them are sensitive to gentle pressure on the skin surface. All right, guys, that is all I have for you today. I will see you guys next week. Have an excellent weekend.